Starting with the name of Allah, the most compassionate and most merciful. Before everything else, let me present you with the prophetic words. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, hope you are fine and healthy along with your daily life activities. So I am glad to be here with you once again, presenting my second lecture, that is regarding of the scope of psychology and methods of study which is used in psychology. So as we in earlier lecture we discussed about the definition of psychology, as we define that psychology is a science which is dealing with motives, which is dealing with feelings, emotion, thoughts and action of man and women. Or we say that psychology concerned with the observation and explanation of humans' behavior in single individual or in groups. So it is differently defined by different social scientists. So like we define that psychology is the science that aims to give us better understanding and control of the behavior of the organism as a whole. And simply we can say that psychology is the study of mind and behavior. It scientifically studies the human behavior and mind. And as differently it is defined by another social scientist and psychologist, that he defined that psychology is the scientific study of human behavior and mental process and how they are affected by an organism. I mean that by physical state, mental state and external environment, how these factor in affecting the human behaviors. So psychology study this one, or we can say it is the science that systematically study and attempt to explain all observable behaviors and its relationship to the unseen and mental processes that go on inside the organisms and to external events in the environment. Scientifically, it is study of behaviors. So behaviors are all those observable and unobservable, seen or unseen activity that a person is performing, whether thinking, walking, eating, like all these activity includes, or anything that we do, we feel and think, that is called behaviors. So psychologists study these behaviors of a person, in individual, in groups or in single persons. So we see that psychology is a scientific study of behavior in mind or mental process. When we use the term behavior, we should study both. We study both animal as well as human behaviors. So the term behavior refers to all those actions, observable action, as for example like eating, like speaking, walking and other body movements, as well as to mental activity. For example, it study like for example planning, it study thinking, it study imaginations, it study perceptions and remembering and learning. So scientifically it study the humans' mind and behaviors. As it is defined that psychology, psychology, the study of all those scientific theories and psychological principles, getting of knowledge of all those theories and psychological principle. Then the same theory and psychological principle could be used for the solution of human problem that they are facing in their life. So mainly we study the psychology to remove all those related problem which is affecting the productive life of a person's, which is affecting the function of humans. So mainly psychology knowledge is being applied in the society just to finish the human problem. The subject is being established, it's being created for the reason to solve all those problems that a man is facing in his life, in the societies, and to fulfill all those gaps which cannot be fulfilled by other sciences. So this is one of the important sciences, social sciences. However, human behavior is not the only interest of psychology. Psychology is also concerned with the behavior of animals, because we can carry out study with them that we should not be permitted or wish to do with human beings. For example, we can remove a portion of their brain from the animal, can be removed to study the subsequent effect of the ability to learn, but we cannot remove the brain of humans. So that is why psychology is not only the study of human but also animals. As we are studying psychology, there are some objectives that why do we study psychology. We study psychology, the first objective is to understand the human behaviors. Secondly, we study psychology to predict the human behavior by means of observations and experimenting. And third is to influence or alter the behavior of individual or group in a desirable way so that they can achieve the goal he desires. So mainly we study psychology for understanding of the behavior of humans. Now, it is not the matter that a person who studies psychology for a very short period of time or get a very short trainings or study a few books, he will understand the behavior of a person. It's impossible. In order to understand the behavior of a person, one needs to go for long years of trainings in the field of psychology and study for a long time to be a specialist in the field. Then, based on years of training, based on the psychological knowledge, based on the experience the person has gained throughout his life, then that person can understand the behavior of another person, while a common person who knows little about the psychology is not possible to understand the human behaviors. So now let me to discuss about that what is the scope of psychology. The scope of psychology is as wide as it can be seen from any angles, and it is described into two categories. We study the psychology first as a basic research psychology or as a pure psychology, and second, a portion of psychology is applied. It means practically this is the application portion of the psychology which is being practiced in the society for the removal of the problem that humans are facing in the groups or as an individuals. So first is research psychology. In research psychology, we are getting the knowledge. It is providing us the principles, the framework in theory. The contents of this is dealing with the formulation of psychological principle in theory. That psychological principle and theories then being applied in application of the psychology in the applied psychology in order to remove the tension, the stress, the depression, the psychological problems which is humans are facing in the society. It suggests various methods and techniques that how to analyze, how to assess, how to modify and improve the behavior of a person. Or its purpose is to contribute to acknowledge, to contribute to the knowledge of behaviors. Like for example, it can be used. This knowledge can be gained through college, university, laboratory, and department are the main employment setting of the basic psychology. I mean that basic psychology has the following more fields as well. So we get the knowledge from various sources, from very sources, and that sources we get the knowledge. Then we can be applied in many field of study and many field of places. So that is what research. In research psychology, mainly we are going to understand the psychological theory in the strategy and policy and idea and principles. That principle which could be later on used in our practical life, in our second portion of life, that is the implementation of these psychological knowledge for the removal of all those problems that a man is facing, which is related to psychology, which is related to the psychological disorders. This research psychology or pure psychology has many branches, has many fold subfields. As I told you, the scope is as wide as you see the word from different angles. So like we have general psychology, we have abnormal psychology, we have child psychology, social psychology, comparative psychology, cognitive psychology, biological psychology, experimental psychology, criminal psychology, forensic psychology, industrial psychology, and health and human factor psychology. We have another psychology by the name of counseling and development psychology, clinical psychology, educational, personality, neuropsychology, school psychology, sports psychology, and quantitative psychology. As I told you that the scope is very broad, very broad. If you see from any angle, you need to know about all these things. Understanding of the principles and psychological principle and theory regarding this, we need to research about to get the knowledge. Then we can use that knowledge in their practical fields, in different field of life, in order to resolve the issue that we are facing, humans are facing in the societies. So each and every one have its own specialty. You can do it for you can go ahead with it, like for example, you can do a PhD, you can do postdoctorate in this, you can do years of training in each field of the psychology, and to understand better, and that knowledge could be then betterly implemented in the societies. So that is the subfield of the research psychology. It means we have to go through first understanding of all these, each field of the psychology, know the different principles, and that principle could be used in the second portion as a practical psychology. So second is applied psychology. Now, application of psychology in world of today. Where do we can apply these psychological principle in theory and knowledge that we got from the research psychology? Now, where is the practical application and where is the practical place? I mean that where we can utilize this knowledge and where we can benefit the other from the field of this study. I mean that which field of human life problem could be resolved by the studying of this. So that is applied psychology. So what is applied psychology? Applied psychology uses the various field of basic psychology. I mean that what the research psychology we discussed previously, that could be used in applied psychology to improve the quality of life of the human being in various fields like school, industry, hospital, consultancy, and community. Then we need to know about the research psychology, and we practically use them in applied psychology. In applied psychology, the theory generated through pure psychology or research psychology find its practical shape. It's the application of psychological rules. It is the application of psychological principles and theories in the techniques with different to the real practical life situations. I mean that what we learn in pure psychology, we give a practical shape in applied psychology in order to remove the problem that we are facing in a real practical life. So that is the applied psychology. Now let me just go about with each in details. The person who has done the PhD or he is specialist in the field of psychology, for example, a clinical psychologist. Now, who is a clinical psychologist? He has studied clinical psychology as a research portions. Now, what there is in research portion, he has learned being as a clinical psychologist, he is going to apply his knowledge practically to solve the human problem in field of medicine. So, what is clinical psychology? It deals with the evaluation, diagnosis and treatment of individual psychological disorder. Principles activity, for example, includes interviewing the client, psychological testing, and providing group or individual psychotherapy. So clinical psychology is mainly dealing in studying all those psychological problems, diagnosing them, and working with the people in order to how to prevent these problems, and working with the peoples to prescribe some medicine for their treatment purpose of the psychological problems. Now we have another field of study which we use educational psychology as a research psychology. Here we are studying as an educational psychologist, which is a person which is a specialist. Now what the knowledge he got from the educational psychology, now it is practically used in educational field. Educational psychology is mainly devoted to understanding of the different aspect of teaching learning process. It is concerned with the application of the principles, techniques and method of psychology to the teaching and learning process. It is which tries to apply the psychological principle, theory and techniques to human problem in educational situation. I mean that students are facing with educational with the teaching and learning process that is affecting their learning process, that is affecting the intelligence, level of students. So whoever the students are facing with any educational problem in educational institutions, so the educational psychologists are employed there. They have been given job there, they have been recruited there, they have been staffed there in that educational institution, either that is school, college or university. So these educational psychologists are working side by side with students and teachers, that how to remove the problem that students and teachers are facing in educational situations. So that is what educational psychologists. So in many developed countries, in each school there is educational psychologists. So they are working with children to improve the intelligence level, IQ levels, and they are just working there just that why the children are not learning better. So they're working with students to see what are the factors that cause the person to become dull or to become lazy. So what are the problems? So educational psychologists has been working with the students to make them important persons, to make them a greatest person, to make them intelligent persons. So the educational psychologist is giving their theory and ideas, generating for the solution of educational problem. So that is the practical in application of educational psychology in world of today. So we have industrial psychology. Industrial psychologist is a person who is working closely with the many of employees and their relationship between and their working setups. So they are employed in business and industry, in government and in college and university, and perform variety of jobs. So they work in many industries and companies and factories, that how to make a better relationship between the employees and the top level management, that how to resolve their issue, what the employees are facing during their course of work. So whatever the problem the employees are facing, so what the conflict is arising between the top level management and the employees regarding their work in health and safety, regarding their promotions, regarding their other health related problems. So whatever the problems are being created in the organizations due to various factors, the industrial psychologists are working there, and they are employed there in the industry and factories to work from the very close angles to remove the problems of employee, to make a better relationship between the employee and the managements. So that is industrial psychologist, which is giving his view regarding the improvement of industrial sectors. So another field of study that is being applied in various in a specific place, that is organizational psychologist. This main focus of this is on the relationship between people and organization, such as business. It is an outgrowth of industrial psychology. It means organizational psychology is taken its group from industrial psychology, and is also known organizational behaviors. So it tried to study and solve the different organizational problem which is existing in school, hospital, university, military, and company. Mainly, these organizational psychologists are being employed in various institutions, in various administrations, to work from very close angle with the peoples inside the organizations, to make a better environment, an improved and enhanced environment, that each individual is working in order to achieve the organizational goals smoothly, without any cost and without any time too much to be consumed. So to make a better relationships, what the problem is being there in the organization that is affecting the productivity and the functionality of the humans behaviors, so that is definitely affecting the overall objective and goals of the organizations to be achieved. So how to make a better relationship among these peoples within the organization? So organizational psychologists are implied there. They are giving the suggestion, theory and idea and policy and strategies being developed by them in order to solve the human problems within the organizations. Another things that we have military psychology که در بخش نظامی از استفاده میشه در نظام، مثلا در استخدام پلیس و اردو و ملی امنیت حالت روانی شخص را دیده، ببینیم روانشناس ها در اوجا فعالیت خود را انجام میده، ببینه که مثلا چی از انسان از چی نوع مزاج از چی نوع حالت روانی برخوردار هستند. So it is concerned with the use of psychological principles and techniques in military science. how to keep the morale of the soldiers and citizen high during the wartime. In در حالت جنگ ما morale عساکری خود چطور بلند کنیم، ما چطور وارا تشویق بکنیم، وارا که اعتماد به نفس داشته باشد. So how to secure better recruitment of the personals for fighting capacities in organizational climate and leaderships. So military psychologists are being employed in the in military science sections, like in field of in their military field. So they are going to follow up each and every police, each and every army. Where are they? What are they doing? With whom they have the relationship? What the problem they are facing? They are going to resolve all these issues. The military psychologist is being employed in the field of militaries. So this is another field of study. So that is why the scope is very broad. It's from every angle. If you see, we need the psychologist to be employed in work in order to remove different sort of problem that the humans are facing. Another psychologist that is called environmental psychology or environmental psychologist. As a research psychology, we study environmental psychology. When we study as a research in pure psychology, we got the theory and principle and knowledge from the in environmental psychology. Now, the person who is trained and specialized in such field, that person is called psychologist. Now, the person who knows better about the environment, so such person is called environmental psychologist. So environmental psychologists work in school, industry and government setting. They design work environment and study the effects of crowding, noise and air pollution on behavior. Let's suppose if you see the pollution of city inside Kabul, inside Afghanistan, many cities are being polluted. Now this pollution has affected the functionalities in productive life of the people. They have developed stress, they have developed depression, many psychological problems, many health related problems. Now, what are the effects of environment on the behavior? This relationship could be solved by the help of the environmental psychologist who is giving his theory and idea and principle to remove these problems in the societies. Another field which is very much distinctive and different from psychologists, that is psychiatrists. Now, the difference between psychology and psychiatrist, as in my first lecture I made it clear that psychologist is a person who study in the university. Years of training is going there, but he is not prescribing any medicine to patients. It means he is doing psychotherapy. تداوی درمانی روانی میکند روانشناس. ولی psychiatrist که از عقلی و عصبی دکتر میباشد. He study in medical schools. He goes years of trainings. Then psychiatrist is a person whose specialty is in medical science, and he is devoted to the treatment, study and prevention of mental disorder. And that psychiatrist can prescribe the medicine. They are MBBS and MD doctors. Psychiatrists are writing the medicine, but psychologists are not writing the medicine. They are only doing a psychotherapy. So that is what another field of study. Now, for example, in sport and exercise psychologists, this field applies psychological knowledge to athletes' activities and exercise. It considers the role of motivation, the social aspect of sports, and physiological impact of training and muscle development. It helps people improve their sports performance. They are working. Sports psychologists are working in a sport team that how to upgrade, develop the moral of cricketers or athletes, how to fight better and how to defeat the opposite teams, and how to fight against stressful situations. So sport and exercise psychologists are working in a sport team to develop the spirit of athletes to fight in various situations effectively and more efficiently without experiencing any psychological problems or stress and depressions. They are learning, they are teaching them the things which they require during the fighting times. So sports psychologists and exercise psychologists, and that is another field that we required and we recruit and employed these psychologists in field of psychology, in field of study of the psychology. In counseling psychology, the person who is always giving counseling, consultation, advice. If a person needs to be consulted and needs to be advised regarding many problem in their social life, for example, a person is facing with personal matters, for example, marriage problem, for example, couple life problems, for example, decision making problems. So a person is facing a lot of things in their life. He cannot take a prompt decisions. It means he cannot resolve family matter issues. Now he is meeting with a counseling psychologist, and counseling psychologist is showing them some strategy and tips that should be followed by the persons and patient. Then that issue would be resolved. Now it usually works with a somewhat different client, providing the assistance and helping the people struggling with everyday problem of their modern problem of whether that is moderate or that is severe. Thus, they often engage in family matters, marital matters, that husband and wife relationships, career counselings, focus on helping individual to resolve personal and social issue which is related to their work, school, family. This address developmental issues and daily stresses. So how much the psychology is important, that is working with us to resolve all those issues, whether that is personal, whether that is social, which is related to our work, related to our education factors or family matters. So how is it playing a positive role in our life? So that is called a counseling psychologist. The same as we are having health psychology. So health psychology is a person who is or health psychologist. It's a person that is giving health tips to the people, that how to be healthy and from what how to be healthy and how to lead a healthy life. How to be fit. Health psychology is the field that studies the role of the psychological factors in the promotion of health and prevention of illness. It has the interest and relation between stress and illness. It describes the interaction of biological, psychological, and social factors. This model is also known by biopsychosocial model. So health psychologist is always providing the suggestions and advice regarding how to be healthy and how to prevent various mental disorder and mental problems. And health psychologists are working always how to promote the health of publics and individual in the societies. So that is another field in practical application of psychology in world of today. The same is we're having developmental psychologists. So developmental psychologists study the changes, study those changes, like for example physical changes, social and personality, what changes occur from the baby, from their infancy life throughout his adulthood and old age. So from the day the person is born and the day up to the date that the person is getting older, what the changes, developmental changes taking place in the life of a person, that is called developmental psychologist is going to study this and work with the persons to remove the problem in each state of a life of a person's. This study show that how physical, social, emotional, and cognitive changes is taking place in human being throughout the course of their life, like childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age. If they are facing any problem during this period of time, so a developmental psychologist is going to study and going to resolve their issues. Another field of psychology, field of applied psychology, that is forensic psychology. روانشناسی عدلی کی بخاطر در بخش عدلی و قضایی ماضی استفاده میکنیم در شناخت مثلا مجرمین، در شناخت مسائل دیگری ما از روانشناسی عدلی استفاده میکنیم. So forensic psychology applies psychology to the legal system. This includes jury deliberation process and the best way to select jurors. Some forensic psychologists train police to handle domestic disputes, negotiate with host takers, and many more things. Mainly it is used for, like it is a criminal psychology, like for understanding, for knowing different behaviors which is relevant to the behaviors of criminals. So that is forensic psychology is mainly used for training the police, that how the police manage some of the issue that is whether in any level, and how to negotiate in the society. So that is forensic psychology. So we have medical psychologists. Many kind of disease, especially mental, neurological disease, can be psychologically treated. So medical psychologists study the relationship between stress, personality, and disease like heart attack, ulcer, high blood pressures, and emotional problem which is associated with illness of disabilities. So medical psychologists providing the knowledge, principle, and idea that how to treat many of the medical and mental related problems, how could be easily resolved. So we need a medical psychologist to provide a vast knowledge to us. Military psychologists, it's once again we are using in the military science. So now that we have to discuss about, if you know, we study the psychology study about human mind and behavior, how to study human behavior. So psychology uses a lot of methods and techniques to understand the human behaviors. So psychologists tell us the scientific study of human behavior. So special tool and procedure will help us in gathering and organizing its subjects matter or the essential facts about the behavior. So these procedures are termed as method, which are used to study human behavior. There are under. So many of psychologists utilizing and using variety of methods for the reason in order to get and obtain knowledge about the human behaviors. So they are using, for example, the first method that they are gathering, which are mostly used, for example, that is introspections. It is the chief method of psychologists use for gathering information or facts or data about the human behavior. The following methods are being applied. So introspection is a method which is used for gathering of information and data from other people to understand their behavior. Introspection means looking into oneself or self-observation or self-analysis. It involves carefully examining and reporting one's own behavior, thoughts, emotions, sensations, and mental notes. If you would like to know about our own behavior, so we see our own self, we are observing our own self, we are analyzing our own self, the good and bad things, we are enlisting the good and bad things in us. So to know about ourselves, to study our own behavior, that method is called introspection methods. To know the emotion, mental states. So it have advantage and disadvantage as well, these methods. So its merits or advantages that it is fundamental methods of psychology. Observation and experimentation are based upon introspections. It gives us direct, immediate, and exact knowledge of our own mental process. This method does not require any laboratory to be tested our behavior there, but it is self-study, self-analysis, self-monitored study of method. We can see our own behavior. So that is introspection methods. While that is merits, it is also having demerits. So this method is not applicable for children or mentally retarded people because they cannot introspect. This introspection method cannot be used in children because children cannot study their behavior, what their inner what they have. They cannot analyze themselves. So this is one drawbacks and demerits or disadvantage of this method. It is purely private affair and cannot be verified by other observer. And in many cases, the patient may have insight to know about their condition or language to describe them accurately. So it also have merits, also have demerits. Another method that is called descriptive research methods in psychology. Research is the critical inquiry and it is the investigation about seeking the facts. So inside the descriptive methods, it includes some other method as well in order to gather information regarding the behavior of other people. Case study is one of the descriptive methods. So when we would like to study individual in depth and details, then we need to know about this case study. So one individual is examined intensively to find out as much as possible about the certain problems or issue that a person is having or that is related to that person's. Survey is another descriptive research method of a psychology in which we are gathering information from larger number of people. We take a sample and finally we come into come into conclusion that what sort of behavior these people or what are their feelings regarding this issue these people are having. So asking for response to interview or questionnaire, it collects information about behaviors, opinion, attitudes, life experience or personal characteristics. Survey is commonly in the form of interview or questionnaire. This is another method we are getting information regarding the behavior of other people, their opinion, their attitudes, their behaviors, and their life experience. To know about the others, then we need to know about to use a survey method. It also have merits, also have demerits. Merit means advantage. It is easy to take the use of these methods. A large number of data can be collected in very short time, and it is a short time required. Survey method takes not too much time, short time. While what are the demerits or what are the disadvantages? This method may also have a disadvantage. It is validity of a tool. I mean, we cannot how we will say that the data we are collected is a valid data. So this is the demerits. Mostly it is concerning question for the people. Sample selection criteria. We have to take a sample. While different sample are being taken from the society and community, and you're going to conduct your study. So sample criteria, selection criteria is required. Cooperation from public, whether public is helping you or to collect the data or not, as well as the behavior is not observed directly, it is indirectly because you are collecting the data through questionnaire or through some other source of information being taken from the societies. So these are the demerits. Experimental is another method that is being used in psychology, the most scientific and objective methods of studying behavior. So since the word experiment comes from the Latin word meaning to try, to put to test, so the use of this method has raised psychologists or psychology to the studies of experimental science like physics, chemistry, and psychology. So the psychologist is doing some practical experiment, maybe in family, maybe in society, maybe in class, in groups, to know about the behavior of other peoples and to conclude what the problem the people are being faced or being faced within the given community, within the given society, and find a solution to that. Because all psychological knowledge that we are getting in every field of study is being used for a definite purpose to solve the human problems. Observation method is another method that is being used in psychology to know about the behavior of other people. So we use this is most widely used method. This method is dependent on overt behaviors. It is done by a second persons. I mean, the other will tell us that they will observe something bad in Koreans and will tell us, and we will collect the data. I mean, we see this behavior. Collect data is reported. It may be formal, it may be informal, participant or non-perceptible observations. So it also have merits and also have demerits. Merits is that it is used to understand the behavior of children. It is economical, and nurses can use it for her patients. Nurses see in the hospital their patient, their behavior, their interaction and actions, how they behave. Demerits that consent is not possible, and data depends on the attitudes and experience of the observers. While we have developmental methods of getting data collection as well. So observing the period of growth used in field of development psychology. In this method we need to know about the physical, social, moral, language and emotions are observed in children. Another method that we use to get the knowledge about the behavior, to understand their behavior, is interview method. So interview method, as you know, that it's a face-to-face interaction between two persons, respondent and interviewer. So is also a method of getting information about individual. So an interview is a face-to-face conversational exchange where one person can elicit information from the other, see each other, their interactions, their emotion, their thinking, their behaviors, their feelings, and get the data. So that is another methods. So another methods that being used in psychology, that is life history method. This involve intensive study of individual by tracing the development of particular form of behavior. It has two sub methods, which is called daybook method. In daybook method, we record the daily development of a child or of persons. what the improvement take place during course of their life. So in daybook method, we record the daily improvement enhancement of a person's and child developments, and we get the data from there that how much the child was, for example, his behavior was in the infancy, in the middle stage, in the old stage. So another method that is being also used in life history, that is biographical methods. So we simply take the data, psychological understanding from the analysis of the records of man's, how they lived in the past, and set down by themselves and others. So we collect the data from their biography and different stage of their life in the past. Finally, another method, that is case history. So we take the collecting information from the case history. The parents provide the data about the individual being studied by psychologists to discover the cause of in the solution of some social adjustment problem that is being taken in societies. So it has another subfield which is called field study methods. So it is the oldest research methods used in psychology, because this method is used where experimentation is not possible. Where experimentation method is not possible, in such case we are going to use another method by the name of field study method. The person is going to field, practically he see the environment and collecting the data. So it also have merits, also have demerits. Merit is that in case history methods, the important things is that, the good things is that, the advantage is that we can get in-depth information regarding somebody behaviors. But it is exploratory research method are used. It means exploring the behavior of other. While demerits are also there parts of the study. Cannot be generalized the findings. It is a time consuming, and researcher may do the BS or may discriminate while researching. So all these methods are used. All these various methods are used for only one reason: to get the knowledge, to gather the data and informations from many methods and put them into practical life of a person to solve their problems. ما شما علم غیب نداریم که بفهمیم یک نفر بشناسیم که در کدام حالت است، آیندهش چی خواهد بود، فعلا در کدام حالت است، چی مشکل داره چی نداره، مطلب اخلاق و مزاج و بیهیویرش چی قسم است. ما ایرا نمیتونیم از علم غیب خود، ولی میتونیم که ما از بعضی متدهای استفاده میکنیم، از علم روانشناسی استفاده کنیم، از تجربات خود استفاده کنیم، بالاخره ما یک نفر مطالعه کنیم، بیهیویرش بشناسیم، شخصیتش را بشناسیم. و هر متد اما نقصانات و فایدهش داشت. در کل ما میگیم که علم روانشناسی ما به خاطر رفع کردن همه مشکلاتی که انسان در زندگی خود روبرو میشه او را حل فصل میسازه در هر عرصه زندگی که باشد. یک علم بسیار وسیع هستند، در دنیا از بسیار زیاد استفاده می شود، در هر رشته تخصص دارد. می تواند که واز اینمی افرادی که در تخصص می کند در هر پالوی زندگی در پالوی مردم کار بکند تا مشکلات این انسان ها را مشخصا در رشته حل بکند. So this is one of the important social science because its impact is very wide. تاثیرات بسیار زیاد هستند. So we use it in our daily life in order to remove our mental and psychological problems. نو د روانشناسی یا د اروپايي د علم پس دکړې سره موږ په ټولنه کې هغه ټولو ناخوالو او مشکلات ته د پای ټکی کې خودلې شو کوم چې انسان ورسره په رواني حالت، په فزیکي حالت او په اجتماعي حالت کې ټولنه کې ورسره مخ کېږي. د دې ټولو مشکلاتو د حل لپاره موږ د روانشناسی د علم څخه په استفادې د انسانانو اولا په ژوند کې د هغوی ته د آرام او سوکال او خوشاله ژوند برابرول تر څو هغوی تشویش ونه لري، هغوی خفګان ونه لري. دغه د منځه یوسو نو موږ د روانشناسی د علم څخه استفاده کوو. نو دا یو محصل ته، یو تجار ته، یو ډاکټر ته، یو سیاستدان ته، هر چا ته د علم درلودل مهم ده چې باید په دې باندې دوی دغه علم د ځان سره ولري. So it's until now, till then, Allah Hafiz. If you faced any questions, if you need any suggestions, if you have any critics, if you need any problems related to the question, related to the topics today, so you can share your idea, your suggestion, your questions in my WhatsApp. Through my WhatsApp, I would be glad to know about and just help you in this regard to remove all your problems and give an answer to your questions on the spot. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.